Abraham Lincoln, FDR, JFK, MLK, Margaret Thatcher, Maya Angelou, Winston Churchill, Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler. Those last two might stand out from the rest, but setting aside how you might feel about this wide-ranging, eclectic list of notable figures in history, there is one thing they all have in common. And it's not just that they are noteworthy, but it is why. All of them are known for the power of their words, even if the words were not always used for good. You could even argue that in some cases, their words even helped shape the course of history. For some, there is no doubt. And so, they are a true testament to the difference that words can make. They can lead to war. They can lead to peace. They can lead to anger. They can lead to love. They can even change everything, whether for good or evil. Words matter. And we don't just need to look at the best orators in history to learn this. It's something we all probably know from experience, and something we learn very early on in our youngest years. Now, as someone who's had the opportunity to serve in 2 churches with day schools and having had the opportunity to lead chapel services for kids as old as 6th grade to those as young as 3 years old, what I have learned is this: children don't have a filter. They tell it like they see it, or rather, what they think or feel in the moment. From the best of compliments to the worst of insults, even if they don't really mean it. I'm sure you parents and teachers know something of what I'm talking about. And so from a young age, we prioritize the importance of how we use our words, because we know intrinsically that words do matter. Our words, our language, are the means by which we communicate information and feelings, our fears, our hopes, and more. Words and phrases like, "I'm sorry," "Thank you," "I love you." Those words mean something to the people who say them and to the people who hear them. So yes, words do matter. And they are also how we speak our ideas into reality. As we know from prominent figures in history, like the ones I've mentioned and many more, words can be used as a means for good or for evil. And they can change everything. It is to this point that the author of the letter of James speaks to us today, especially the way and ways that our words can be used for harm. James writes that the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great exploits. How great a forest is set ablaze by a small fire, and the tongue is a fire. With it we bless the Lord and Father, and with it we curse those who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. The author of James even laments the fact that the power to bless or curse comes from the same mouth and wishes it were not so. So it was with those like Adolf Hitler, who used the power of words to denigrate, to scapegoat, to exploit people's worst fears and turn people against their neighbors. One small step after another, of course, until, as we know, the world was engulfed in war, and so many innocent people paid the price. All started by one man's poisonous words, inciting the worst in others, as James says, cursing those who are made in the likeness of God. And so it was with Winston Churchill in just the opposite way, who used the power of words to rouse and inspire his fellow leaders in England, even those ready to give up and surrender, to move from apathy and to stand up against evil, not only for the sake of themselves, but also for their neighbors far and near. And how would history look different if he hadn't? What we learn as children is clearly borne out across history. Words matter. But of all the figures that I've mentioned thus far, I've neglected to mention the one whose words mattered most, and about whom what we say matters a lot. The one whom the Gospel of John says is the Word made flesh, Jesus Christ. We hear today that as Jesus traveled with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi, Jesus asks the disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" In other words, Jesus said, "Hey, y'all, spill the tea. What are people saying about me?" And they answered him, "Well, Jesus, some are saying that maybe you're John the Baptist, or some think that maybe you're Elijah. Others are saying you're a prophet." And then Jesus asks them point blank, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter answers with his words, "You are the Messiah." And then Jesus sternly ordered them to not tell anyone about him. Not yet. The power of words here is on display in what others say, in what the disciples say, with Peter here in this first spoken recognition of Jesus' true identity in Mark, and in what Jesus tells them not to say just yet. But the passage continues on. And moments later, we hear Jesus tell them what is going to happen to him, that he will undergo great suffering, he will be rejected by the authorities, that he will be killed, and after 3 days rise again. Powerful, probably confusing, and certainly gut-wrenching words, even if they are true. So powerful that they lead Peter to rebuke Jesus. The same Peter who had just said out loud who Jesus truly is, and who now can't stomach the very words that Jesus was now speaking, because they were too hard to hear. To this, Jesus uses his own words like a whip. "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." And Jesus proceeds to teach them and us, using words that, as he is wanting to do, that seem contradictory, but that draw us deeper and help us to perceive the truth in a way we perhaps hadn't before. "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it. and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. Powerful words spoken by the Word. As is the case with any words, however, it's not just about how good they are or even how eloquently spoken. It's about who chooses to listen, truly listen, how they respond. For it is not only the words that we say that matter, but whose words we choose to listen to and whose words we follow. So, if you are still listening, all of you, and haven't tuned me out yet or nodded off, how will these words of Jesus inspire you now? Will you listen to these words that, like the words of the best figures in history, inspire others to sacrifice their life in order to save it? Will you deny the words of those who entice us to want to save our life and lose it? As we continue to navigate a time in which there are so many voices swirling around us in the world, even in our own communities, aiming to guide our decisions using words, some true, some false, pulling us in all different directions and sometimes away from each other. I pray that you will direct your focus, your attention, and especially your listening ears on the Word made flesh, whose words are reliable and true, who lead us to truth, even if the words are hard to hear, as they were for Peter. And follow him, even if it means, yes, taking up your cross, whatever that cross might be, and sacrificing something of yourself for the sake of your neighbor. And use your words, like those best figures in history, as Jesus intends, for good rather than evil, to inspire rather than to denigrate, to build up rather than to tear down. As James says, for blessing rather than cursing, such that it is Jesus, this Jesus who Peter first identified as the Messiah, will be clearly identified in you through your actions and in your words. For as our psalmist prays, let us also pray. Let the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen.